2019 was quite a good year for animation when it came to content. While we did see many juggernauts in the industry like Gumball and My Little Pony come to a conclusion ending its reign, there were plenty of big hits that came in the spotlight. We got big studios like Cartoon Network pumping out two enjoyable shows like Mau Mau and Infinity Train that received massive praise upon releasing, as expected of Cartoon Network. On the other end, we had big surprising YouTube animators promoting their pilot, with one getting picked up to be made into a series. However, there was one show that didn't receive the big massive praise, tidal wave these three were getting, and many others. But I'm sure as heck it was not a show to miss. That series was Netflix's original Green Eggs and Ham.
Hey, guitar player. Watch me backflip, watch me backflip, let me work my magic.
Created by Jared Stern and released on November 8th, 2009, the show is obviously centered off the Dr. Seuss book, Green Eggs and Ham, serving as the second animation adaptation this book got, with the first one being an OVA produced in 1973. The show boasts a pretty impressive cast, with the two main leads, Sam I Am and Guy Am I, being played by Adam Devine and Michael Douglas respectively. Michael Douglas being in one of my favorite MCU series, Ant-Man, and good old Adam, which I had the pleasure of when watching Game Over Man, seeing how big he is. Yeah. And yes, Ellen DeGeneres is an executive producer of the show, but in light of recent accusations, I do not know if she'll continue to be on the show, but yeah, Adam, Eggplant. The series went on to get critical praise, even getting a 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, beating out every other Dr. Seuss movie adaptation. It even won an Emmy for casting this year, and also got nominated twice for Outstanding Writing and Main Title. It even got renewed for a second season only a few weeks after airing on Netflix. Wow, for a show about a 62-page book released in 1960, that's as old as my dad, you would be surprised how much spotlight it's been getting by the higher-ups. Well, yeah, but it's more than just the legacy of Dr. Seuss. It's more than just the cast and the people working on it. It's about the effort in writing and story that really gives us a good serving. There will be spoilers, of course, so I highly recommend stopping this video to watch it, since it's such a phenomenal show, and on a streaming site filled with a lot of controversial stuff and not too pleasant viewing experiences, it's good to see something that is actually decent. So let's sit back and dig into something new, and analyze the masterpiece that is Green Eggs and Ham. The story of Green Eggs and Ham is not too vastly different from the original story, as it does involve a little tiny gremlin getting Mr. Sadman to trying adequate breakfast. However, the series takes it one step further by incorporating other aspects into it, rather than being a silly adaptation with little substance. In the story, it incorporates the story of a chickaraff, or as we call him, Mr. Jenkins, being free to go home, a rich guy trying to collect the chickaraff for the goal of being impressive, a group of bad guys, the bad guys, hunting down our protagonist to retrieve the chickaraff, a girl and her mom heading to Meatville to explore new sights through two vastly different perspectives, and a goat. But yeah, Guy and Sam, after accidentally switching briefcases, realize they must team up to go to Meatville to go return the chickaraff and meet all these wacky and wondrous characters along the way in this wonderful adaptation of the Seuss world, with of course the main goal being Guy trying Green Eggs and Ham. When it comes to Dr. Seuss books being adapted to film, whether it be animation or live action, there are usually different ways of expanding the story, and this sometimes results in incorporating different scenes not in the book, or adding characters that are irrelevant to the plot, or change the narrative of the story entirely. A brief example of this is the babysitter in The Cat in the Hat, and the post office scene in the Jim Carrey's Grinch. While they are fun scenes at heart and can be found funny, they not only don't add anything to the plot or development of characters, but it also does not feel Dr. Seuss. If the babysitter was cut out of the movie, the plot wouldn't really change whatsoever, and for the Grinch in the mail scene, we still know he hates Christmas, and that Cindy Lou Who is still going to be curious about him. On to the characters in the movie. As mentioned, the characters that change the narrative are usually the main protagonist of their own book. A good example is, well, in all 5 movies. In Jim Carrey's Grinch, he is seen as obnoxious, rude, and just a jerk, so much that the Who's fear him like a demon in folklore. That's not what he is. Well, does 2018 Grinch capture what he is? Well, in Grinch 2018, he's antisocial, miserable, and just goes most of the movie showing how sad he is. This is still not the Grinch. What is the Grinch then? Well, the Grinch is cunning, malicious, and cares nothing about others, not even Max, his own dog, and only himself. He hates the noise of Christmas and wants to ruin it so he can enjoy peace. The Grinch is kind of captured, but it feels flanderized solely to the point where he's just the antagonist, and that's not what the Grinch is in the books. Whoville is no different either, as instead of being a kind-hearted and happy-go-lucky town, it's a town that resembles everything wrong with capitalism and Christmas, making it feel like an exact opposite of what the book intended to have. Only for Singular Who to change it and make it what it is in the book by power of being kind and changing the Grinch. This is not the story. The same can be said for the Cat in the Hat. In the Cat in the Hat, instead of just kids being at home having fun with the cat, it's a snobby girl and rebellious boy meeting a cat. But instead of being fun and lovable, the cat seems psychotic and does not care for the well-beings of others. Yeah, the cat is wacky, but it was shown how he wanted to have fun by letting out your inner child, not necessarily making cheap references to real-life scenarios and parroting a daytime cooking show. That's exactly what it's not. The story is different and makes it feel like a story with the Cat in the Hat, not the Cat in the Hat in the Cat in the Hat. FYI, I thank this movie for we're never getting an Austin Powers for again. I miss Austin Powers. It's not whacking a kid behind the back, not a random lady enjoying a filibuster no, this is not Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is zany puns and stupid slapstick, not 2000s quick jokes, adult jokes, and especially politics. Why am I being so critical on the politics point? Because the next movie, The Lorax, emphasizes this so much. The original Lorax was just teaching kids to care and simply do stuff to show how they care about the world around them. The movie, however, becomes some big way to push the anti-consumerist agenda, the dangers of capitalism in society, and also push the guy behind Coney 2012 to go insane in San Diego on TMZ. Other than that, the movie didn't have that much Dr. Seuss charm, just some ugly manlet who is the epitome of greedy capitalist, boring characters carried by special actors like Betty White and Danny DeVito, and of course, the man who sold Tumblr.
Oh no, not me. I've never simped for him, 'cause I don't like the man who sold Tumblr.
Getting back on track, it's now time to address the final movie out of the 5, the most forgettable, Horton Hears a Who. Surprisingly, this one has the most Seuss energy when it comes to setting, but for the characters, not really. The sour kangaroo isn't sour, she's just downright malicious. Jojo is a walking contrast to the world and doesn't serve as a plot element until the climax, and for some reason, Horton is now an anime character. This movie has nothing really going for it, and it's somewhat forgettable. More of an afterthought than the timeless classic like the book was. While looking at all of these movies as a whole, what do all of these Dr. Seuss movies have? Simple. No soul. They are soulless. Whether it's the misfit humor, the unneeded social commentary, and literal product placement like Happy and the Grinch, the Minions flagship song, and the Universal Studios plug in the rap scene in the Cat in the Hat, it doesn't say Dr. Seuss. It says a huge Hollywood blockbuster movie to take your kids to get them out of the house, and makes you forget that they were originally kids' books in the first place. Now, how does Green Eggs and Ham counter this? How do they fix this? How does Green Eggs and Ham succeeded where others have failed? Well, I think it's time to bring up one episode to demonstrate how, and the episode I chose is the episode The Dark. For a brief synopsis, after they escape the fox from the previous episode, Guy and Sam see a motel sign that ends up being a dark pit, where Guy has to invent to get out of there with Sam. Meanwhile, Michelle E. and E.B. stop at a breakfast in bed and bond over drawing pics, and the bad guys go back on the trail in their funny fashion. All the problems I listed in the previous Dr. Seuss films is what is done right in this exact episode. With the fox, he isn't much of a crucial plot point, but he does help move the characters along in their journey and development, being Sam and Guy caring for Mr. Jenkins, and also, well, he was in the book himself. He's not characterized by any modern day trope, but given the charm of a Dr. Seuss character, as shown by his love for a chicken on a farm and her eggs. As for Guy and Sam, they are on par with their book self, with Sam being happy and still pushing for Guy to try things, not only Green Eggs and Ham, but for ways to get them out of the pit, and Guy being the grumpy and reluctant person he is. As for the other characters, well, E.B., Michelle E., Glunts, and McWinkle, they do get development that helps them grow. The differences between their development and that of other non-book originated Seuss characters in movies is they don't serve as a gag or a one-off joke. The jokes they do deliver and have in their segment isn't some form of commentary or an adult joke. They have a relevance to the plot, but they want to stick to their own subplot instead of intertwining with Sam and Guys at the moment. And especially that the characters and the world feels at home. It feels natural. It feels like the Dr. Seuss world. And this goes for a lot of the story, not just one episode. The jokes are either slapstick gags or puns. The buildings and settings aren't meant to be relatable to a modern day world, and the characters feel natural and not altered to feel out of place in the world. The bad guys aren't an interpretation of big corporations or downright malicious. Michelle E. isn't some corporate woman or oblivious to her child's feelings. And E.B. is indeed a rebellious girl trope, but she feels at home with this world, as instead of being the coolest of her friend group or being a perfect angel, she only has one goal: to adventure in the world around her, feeling more as a kid than just a hero of the story. The only characters that people would notice that are different are, well, the two main characters that appear in the book, Guy and Sam. Despite this, they still feel at home. Instead of being just a grumpy archetype he is in the book, he is also an inventor who invents fun things like grocery store rides that get you out of pits, and a flying pack that relies on hands flapping around like a kid would in a park. As for Sam, they play on his ability to be arbitrary and his different ways to persuade Guy. But I want to save him for later, as his character is a huge plot point so big it's a spoiler, and I would like to keep that surprise going until the end. Other than what's mentioned, there's so much that adds soul to the series. The references to other non-mainstream Seuss books, the backgrounds and designs that feel like an HD reimagining of Seuss's art, the theme song sounding like a Happy Kid tune rather than a hip-hop cover, and even Guy and Sam quoting the book exactly in episodes.
I will not eat them with a mouse.
These scenes and productions just say, no, scream Dr. Seuss and not a Hollywood blockbuster. Hey, even Jared Stern was concerned about this and made it work, as we see what made it. In an interview about adapting the book, he states how he was concerned not because of anything to do with the other material being the movies, but because he loves Dr. Seuss so much. This was his favorite book when he was a kid, and he learned to read it, so it's a lot of weight to take it on. But it's also exciting because he loved it so much and wanted to try and do it justice. He also states how he thought it was a road trip because Sam follows Guy here and there and in a car and a boat and a train. So it's like planes, trains, and automobiles and Midnight Run. And he loves buddy road trip movies, and those are two of his favorites. So his mind just started working. Hopefully it stays to the essence of what there is but expands on it. From this interview and what we discuss, it's clear to see that the creators didn't want it to be a cash-in movie to make millions at the box office. It didn't want to be a statement about the world around us. It wanted to be one thing and one thing only: a TV show adapted from a book by Dr. Seuss.
Alright, that's enough comparing it to the other Dr. Seuss movies. It's time to talk about it on its own. Let's ask ourselves, how does Green Eggs and Ham fare as a regular kids show? Well, as a kids show, it does its job, and as a story, it's amazing, and with character writing, it's phenomenal. First off, the story itself is a solid cartoony plot. Two guys mix up their briefcases, have to go to meet Bill to avoid the bad guys, try to prove you're valuable to your crush, and the main villain wanting to capture the chickaraff because he wants to be impressive. The story has no major depth into it and doesn't try to say something about society. It just wants to be a fun plot. The antagonist is silly and just silly as he should be, and the villain we are supposed to be afraid of is a literal goat. There is, however, a big plot twist I want to discuss that is a great use of not only the narrator, but also in storytelling and developing a character. That is finding out the bad guys were the good guys, and Sam I Am is the villain. Alright, before you run into the comments saying that I went back on my word saying that's not Dr. Seuss-esque and think I contradicted myself, I want you to go back into the original book and take a look at Sam I Am's actions. In the book, Sam hijacks a car, train hops, does a lot to stalk and torture a man to try food. This isn't changing a character or making him soulless, rather it's exemplifying him and giving him much more than what he is. I'll get to Sam's character later, as I want to talk about the use of the scene cuts and phone calls. Throughout the series, phone calls are crucial to storytelling, cutting in and out to make it seem like A is talking to B. But once the twist hits, you realize that A is talking to C, and B is talking to completely different people. Not only does this make use of clever editing and storytelling, but it also makes the story 10 times more interesting. You might think this ain't a big plot twist, but let me tell you, it's a kid's show, let alone a Dr. Seuss book that was meant for pre-K kids. While it ain't a big plot twist to adults, to kids it's surprising. It's not mind-blowing or in-your-face kind of plot twist. Throughout the story, you get the hint something is up, and if you paid attention to the cues by certain characters, you figure it out somewhat, and either way it hits, it's still shocking. On to the narrator. The narrator is such an amazing narrator. He isn't in your face or barging into dumbed down plot devices. He's there to recap and tell the story. He's also self-aware, but he has every right to. He is reading his story, and he wants to add flair to it. His jokes are funny and clever, and his build-up of suspense feels authentic. He knows what's going to happen, but doesn't make it painfully obvious or holds our hand. Rather, he sugarcoats it to not only give us a more happy charm, but also makes us more invested and enjoy the story more. And personally, I really enjoy that. He's one of the best narrators ever. There are other ways that the storytelling succeeds, and a big example of this is the character build-up and development. The characters aren't just who they are for a set of episodes. You see their motives and desires show as we get through later and later. It ain't some episodic show meant to be for people to pop in and watch at a time, nor is it supposed to be an edgy or deep show. It's just simply well written. I'm not gonna tiptoe around it anymore. Let's jump into what makes the characters amazing. The characters are a perfect representation of modern Dr. Seuss. They aren't over the top, drastically different or one-off gags. Each character has their own unique aspect to themselves and not only fits well with the plot, but also in the Dr. Seuss world. For example, you know why Guy goes with Sam to take Mr. Jenkins home to meet Phil? Simply to go to his new job as a paint watcher after failing to build an invention. You know why Schneers wants to get Mr. Jenkins? So he can be impressive and look great to other rich people. I mentioned this prior. Guy isn't meant to be stupid, angelic, or devious, nor is Schneers meant to be a greedy corporate or manipulative person. They have their own wacky goals, and the plot happens to go with it. And this goes for everyone else. The best way I can explain each character and show how well they fit in this world and how much homage they pay to the show, as well as also the book Green Eggs and Ham, as a story, is the dynamics. The show capitalizes on the dynamics between the big three duos of the show, and each do their own job of empathizing the themes of trying something new, concepts of family, bonding, and opening up to each other. The three big duos of Green Eggs and Ham are Glunts and McWinkle, E.B. and Michelle E., and of course, Guy and Sam. Let's start with the bad guys, Glunts and McWinkle. In my opinion, they are the weakest out of the three, as they aren't really given the death of the other two pairs, but there's still something in there. The duo of someone on their first job and a man on their way out of the job to retirement is fascinating. On one side, we see someone wanting to get this case done and move on, while stress literally makes them paler and paler, and on the other end, we got an optimistic and young, spunky person excited to be on the case. Note, I didn't say to be the main villains, but to be on the case. Why? First off, they aren't. As stated, they wanted to free Mr. Jenkins, and two, they don't exist to be the villains or the antagonists towards Guy and Sam. In most kids shows and movies, yes, even the Seuss ones, the antagonists are there simply to be antagonists and be an obstacle in the protagonist's way in reaching their goals. For these two, they know they aren't the bad guys to be bad. They want to do their job, albeit promoted in different ways. Glunts being optimistic and wanting to enjoy her first job, and McWinkle just wanting for it to be done and move on with his life. Although they don't see direct eye to eye, they definitely have a bond present in them. They might be different ends of the spectrum, but you see how well they get along. It's not toxic, and rather you can see how each character is more than they give off, i.e. seeing McWinkle being concerned for Guy after he says Sam has lied to him, and having a change of heart, which makes him regain color. And Glunts being smart and figuring out the case slowly but surely. They show their ideals and overall how much they are as a great duo. And seeing McWinkle break his perfect record to show humanity by letting Mr. Jenkins go home instead of a zoo, and putting his hat onto Glunts as passing the torch, it's satisfying and feels like a good end to Glunts and McWinkle's character arc. Again, not much to say, but I still feel like they are a great duo, and who doesn't love Glunts? Personally, one of the best characters in the show. Well, second best. I'll get to the first one in a sec. Now onto the other duo, being Michelle E. and E.B. On my first watch, I'll admit, I didn't like Michelle E. that much. Her narrow view of the world and her refusal to hear Guy and sometimes E.B. out really made me not like her and felt she was dense. However, on my second watch, I started to understand her better. She's a mom and, more importantly, a single mother whose husband died when her child was a young age. Not to mention she gave up on painting herself for her daughter. She's overprotective because she lost a lot, and the only thing she has is EB, and doesn't want someone like Guy and I to threaten the harmony between her and her daughter, which is, as we know, the only family she has. Why it is bad to close off any form of change, it's her being isolated that makes her an interesting character, as we slowly see her open up more and enjoy the new things in life slowly as the series progresses, and this is accomplished by her daughter EB. EB is an interesting take on the rebellious action girl trope, as she has a reason. She's not meant to resemble girl power or rather appeal simply to feminism. She's rebellious because she wants to explore the world. She's extroverted and passionate about the world around her, and excited about the idea of new explorations outside of her mother's view or grasp. This is where their dynamic comes into play. Seeing two polar opposite people who are family come in and bond over stuff, it's sweet to see. I want to mention the drawing scene and the gallery scene in Meatville. The drawing scene shows Michelle E. drawing on our book with EB to help get over boredom. Not just a plain book, a book that her profession is on, which is bean counting. This shows how well they can bond despite differences, and how although being serious about work, Michelle E. is not afraid to loosen up in order to give happiness to the daughter she cares so much about. Seeing how she is willing to do something out of the ordinary for her stuck-up character for her daughter is the thing most mothers would do, and I feel the scene isn't appreciated enough for the adequate depth it has. The gallery scene is the final scene, and I feel is the climax of their dynamic build. Art, as a form, is subjective and taken from the mind of the artist to make something out of the ordinary. Is meant to be a form of expression, to tell a message about life or give us a view of the artist and their ideals. Aside from giving Michelle E. more depth than just the mother trope, we see so much of her. We see how expressive she is. The same stuck-up lady who has B-rated Guy and Sam's antics, discouraged her daughter's excitement for the world, and wants to be safe for the security of herself and family, was an expressive and outgoing individual, and that's exactly what EB is. Although being closed off because of her mother, she still finds a way to be expressive to Guy and Sam, and show love for the world around her and caring for Mr. Jenkins. EB herself is an artist of her own merit, and their way of trying something new is slowly opening up to each other and realizing how cool they are despite their polar opposite personalities, and I feel a mother has never been portrayed better in kids' cartoons than Michelle E. herself, and EB is also a trope that was built upon to the point she's something new and enjoyable to witness, and I just love that. Overall, their characters were fun to watch, and hopefully, we can see more of them. Now, onto the final and main duo of the cast, the two born from the book itself, Sam I Am and Guy Am I. Or Sam's friend for the Funko Pop, or Jerry or Grouch for some reason. This one is the big part. Not only is there so much to cover for Sam, but I also am really excited to talk about Guy Am I. Guy Am I is, and personally always will be, not only my favorite Dr. Seuss character, but also my favorite animated cartoon character of all time. Back when the show was airing, I was in a situation like Guy, thinking everything would go well and you had it to make it, only for it to blow up into your face and make you look like a miserable person. When the show came out, I was in a situation sorta like Guy, where I thought I had everything under control and then all of a sudden, it all went through my fingers and next thing you know, I was left with nothing and miserable. I felt like the world was against me. I felt that nothing will go my way and I'll continue to be miserable. I became pessimistic. I became cynical. I became isolated. I became Guy Am I. And his character arc is what helped me recover from such a dark time in my life. So Guy, you are the best and I love you. Keep being the best character on the show and best character ever. Yeah, Glunts fans, I'm sorry, but she's second best. Guy is always number one. So Guy, yes, Guy Am I's character arc was amazing in this series. Usually cartoon negative Nancys have a thing for immediately being happy or positive for the sake of the plot, then going back to fill the status quo for the next episode, disregarding any possible development they could have gotten. Guy, however, is a special case. His arc varies, as throughout the series, he isn't straight out positive or strictly negative. Rather, it depends on the situation he's in, and when he is positive, it's for other aspects in the show, not simply for being happy for the audience. An example is how he's happy about Mr. Jenkins in episode 4, or enjoying his family's company in episode 10, but then going back to being sad when he is shunned by Michelle E, and of course, being lied by Sam. This leads Guy to being more at home and mixed with his emotions, and by the end of the series and finally trying Green Eggs and Ham, he is happy, but because he got development. His emotions weren't set for the plot. It was because of the world around him, and that what makes him so much more grounded and real. He is a person. He feels miserable because he's lied to, rejected, and pushed away. He is happy when he finds comfort from people or even a chickaraf. He knows the world isn't set and is destined to change, and rather, it is how he reacts to the world around him that makes him much better of a character. Speaking of trying Green Eggs and Ham, I want to talk about the main premise, Guy trying Green Eggs and Ham. In the book, it's never stated why he didn't want to try them. All we knew was he was grumpy and hated Sam and nothing more. In the show, they take it one step further and give him a reason. Of course, not for a modern or comedic spin like lawsuits and or capitalism, but rather a simple reason. Trying new things pays nothing for him. He tries inventing and making it big, and it blows up in his face. He feels more real, while also maintaining his Dr. Seuss charm to him. And personally, I just really enjoy that and relate to that. In a world where trying new things is unpredictable and can lead to either fascinating revelations or upset feelings, who wouldn't be afraid of the consequences that can come from it? Overall, Guy is just an amazing character. He feels authentic. He has that Dr. Seuss aesthetic to him, and Michael Douglas just does a fantastic job portraying him. I wouldn't ask for another voice actor than Michael Douglas himself. On to our next protag, Sam, which is by far the most interesting of, all the characters. Remember how I said that Sam I Am in the book does a lot of controversial stuff like hijacking a car and stealing a train? Well, in the show, they heavily acknowledge that by making him a full-on criminal. In the show, it is said that he wants to save Mr. Jenkins because he's an animal activist, but in reality, he works for snares to get him to his collection. This isn't just a plot twist thrown in to make it special. It has been hinted, as Guy calls him out for his lies throughout the story. Sam isn't some twist villain. He is rather a villain done well. When it comes to kids' media, they are so oblivious that they are the villain, to the point it feels popped in and was never intended to be like that in the final draft. When seeing Sam I Am on surface level, and also Origins, he seems like an oblivious plot twist, and doing it will make nothing special other than a shock. However, there are two big factors that contradict it, being his interaction with Guy and his character. For the first one, with Guy, he shows he cares for Guy but is reckless, and as mentioned, he does not always tell the truth. He is shown to lie and manipulate Guy to simply get him move on and stick with him, and also trick him into a false sense of security when he travels. He knows what he is doing, and instead of plopping the twist at the end, they slowly building up, making a second viewing of the series worth it, so viewers can pick up on the cues rather than being spoon-fed by the narrator. The second aspect that makes him more surprising and more authentic is his backstory. In the show, we see why he loves Green Eggs and Ham so much, being that his mom made it for him before she left. Being put in the orphanage and wanting to see her again, he cherished it and cared for it, being that was the only thing he had that reminded him of his mother. He was alone and wanted someone in his life, and his life of crime was the only thing. His life of crime is what would have let him see his mother. He isn't a plot twist villain, he is a villain, and it took us this long to realize his importance to the story as a villain. Overall, while Snares is the antagonist of the story, face cover, he is nothing compared to Sam, who was developed so well, made such an amazing villain. Even his heel change isn't so abrupt. Like his hints towards a villain, he is shown to be warmer to Guy without the idea that he has to betray him. Why is that, you may ask? Well, that's because, like Sam opens up to Guy, Guy opens up to Sam in return. Despite not getting along, they still bond in their travels. They do show care for each other, although Guy has trouble truly expressing it because of everything else in his life. Personally, the scenes they bond over stuff is amazing, and the scene that highlights their care and dynamic the most is the sheet tent scene in episode 10. The sheet tent scene is the climax of their bond, as they both realize the importance of family, and from that, the importance of sticking together. This scene accomplishes two things. One, It makes Guy realize that people love him, even for his imperfections, for his failures. No matter how bad he fails, no matter how miserable he gets, there will always be people that care and value him as a person, whether it be its family or Sam himself. And 2, Sam didn't really have a family, let alone anyone to care for him. The stories he made up in Guy's journey were lies to cope with the fact that his mother left him at an orphanage, the only way of remembering her being how she made him breakfast, green eggs and ham. This scene steps us out of the Dr. Seuss world, not to say a political statement or make a fourth wall joke, but to show us that they're real. They have feelings. They are more than just characters written in a book, characters on a TV screen. They are people we can relate to. While still retaining their Dr. Seuss personified charm, it's still something we can all relate to, and we can all project onto, whether it's rejection or loneliness. Watching this scene made me feel so happy and sad at the same time, as I felt like Guy in the scene. I realized that just like Guy, our flaws and mishaps don't make us who we are to others. There might be many who reject us, but we always have that one person who cares for us, who will never give up on you. Even if you're the most miserable person ever, we all have a Sam I am to our Guy am I, and we don't truly know it until we open up to the people around us and understand them. And when we do open up, and we are able to sympathize with each other, it's such a heartfelt moment, and I had that too with my friend I met at the same time I started watching Green Eggs and Ham. My friend Daniel, who turned 19 this month. Hi Daniel, happy birthday and thank you. You're literally the Sam to my Guy. I'm grateful you're in my life. I know this got really personal, but this is how great this scene is. It makes me feel amazing, and personally, I don't think there's no one who will feel nothing while watching, whether it's being happy that they're bonding, or just the sadness that comes out of it. It's just the perfect and amazing scene, and the visuals and the sound just makes it all together to be a perfect Dr. Seuss scene. While of course, the scene is painful to watch in a good way, knowing Sam's betrayal, it's still a beautiful scene, and personally, this scene entails what makes this show a masterpiece. This scene shows and details the effect of trying new things, aside from when Guy tries green eggs and ham. It's not about trying new food, it's about trying the world, a new world. A new world where you are not alone. A new world where you are not rejected nor disrespected for your flaws. This is a new world with friends, and most importantly, family, who are there for you. In a world where reality can punish you from being astray and not in the norm, it is scary to do something different and new. When you do stuff that you tried or something different, we humans run the fear, the risk of getting hurt, scarred, or left alone. In Green Eggs and Ham, it teaches us more than trying something new. It teaches us to try something new because you have people that love you and care for you. Whether it be because you care too much about people, care too much about your profession, or afraid of the consequences you can face, it doesn't matter. The fact is, you are never doing things alone. We learned that Glunts and McWinkle had each other at their backs. Michelle and E.B. loved each other despite their views of the world. And Sam and Guy have each other, even after their differences and their fights. Sam had never felt the idea of companionship until he met Guy. And Guy was always critiqued and judged by his failures until he met Sam. Their vulnerability of feeling alone and shunned brought them together. And they tried something new. Companionship. This was enough to get Guy to invent again and make friends, and what made Sam reject his path of crimes to be friends with Guy, someone who cares for him. The moral is to try something new, and even if you don't like the results or process, you can keep trying, because no matter what, you will always have someone next to you. There will always be someone who will stand by your side throughout, and make it memorable and wonderful. Their motives might be rugged or downright wrong, or maybe they're just too weird for you, but they still care. And personally, that's all that matters in this life. So if you have someone in life, cherish them. And remember, when you try something new, you are never alone. This is why Green Eggs and Ham is not only the perfect Dr. Seuss adaptation, but also a masterpiece. And I can't wait for season 2. But for now, let's go out and try something new. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for watching. I cried writing this because Green Eggs and Ham is such an amazing show for me, and I really loved talking about it. Thank you so much. I know this is completely different from my buddy fight video. Weird talking about an anime and then to a kid's cartoon, but it's my channel and I love talking about the things I love. So thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share, of course, and have a good day. Also, by the way, if you're watching the Grinch movie, that's totally fine. I respect your opinion. I'm sorry I trashed on it so much, but I actually like them too. I like the Dr. Seuss movies. It's just Green Eggs and Ham is just perfect.